The announcement echoed through the station, sharp and metallic, scattering across the marble floors like broken glass. People rushed past, heels clicking, bags dragging, voices colliding in 1,000 different directions, but she stood still, pressed against the cold railing, her breath catching in fragments. The red scarf around her neck trembled in the draft of a passing train. She held it tighter, as if its threads were the only thing keeping her from unraveling. Her eyes wandered, not searching for anyone in particular, just scanning faces that looked forward, faces that belonged, faces that moved without hesitation. She swallowed hard, a sour taste burning her throat, the suitcase by her side small, faded, one corner patched with tape pinned against her ankle. Its weight was nothing compared to what pressed inside her chest. Boarding now. A voice called from somewhere. Her fingers shook when she brushed her hair away from her eyes. The cracked watch on her wrist ticked a second late, dragging time behind it. It had stopped once, years ago, but she kept wearing it, maybe as proof, maybe as punishment. A man bumped into her shoulder, muttering something without looking back. She wanted to say sorry, but the word froze before reaching her lips. Instead, she stared at the reflection on the station's glass wall, her own face, pale against the blur of strangers rushing behind her. Unemployable. The word surfaced like a bruise beneath her skin. She could still see it written in black ink on that final rejection letter, bold and certain, as if her future had been measured, judged, and discarded. She'd folded the paper into her pocket, but the sound of it tearing her in two still echoed. Now here, in this crowd that did not notice her, she felt the weight of that word cling like smoke. She looked at the scarf again, a gift, a promise once whispered in softer days. She lifted it slightly, pressed it to her lips, and closed her eyes for a fleeting second, as if drawing strength from something invisible. Her suitcase shifted. She placed her palm on it firmly, for a heartbeat. Her face changed, eyes narrowing, jaw set before softening again into silence. A voice called out a last boarding warning. People hurried. The floor trembled under their collective steps. She did not move. The scarf fluttered against her collarbone, alive with the wind, daring her to choose. Somewhere deep inside, a quiet thought surfaced one day. They'll stand in my shadow. Her hand tightened on the suitcase handle, but her feet stayed rooted. And then, a familiar laugh broke through the noise. Her eyes snapped open. The scarf stilled. The station blurred. And everything shifted. The laugh still echoed in her chest long after the crowd swallowed it. For a moment, she almost believed it had been her father's, low, warm, steady, like the rhythm of an old song. But when she turned, there was no familiar face, only strangers pushing forward. Arms heavy with bags, eyes heavy with purpose. Her grip tightened on the small suitcase. She remembered another day, years back, when the bag was new. She had been 12, kneeling on the floor, carefully folding her school uniform inside, while her father watched. His hands, calloused from long shifts, had rested on her shoulder. Take care of your things, he had said softly. Even the smallest bag can carry your future. The suitcase still carried those words, though its corners were scarred, its handle stiff. She ran her fingers along the tape sealing its edge, a patchwork reminder of how many times life had tried to break her open. Around her, voices rose with warmth. A boy rushed into his mother's arms, his schoolbooks nearly spilling onto the floor. A couple embraced by the exit, whispering something only they could hear. She watched, still and silent, the red scarf pulled close to her chin. She wanted to feel what they felt, the weight of someone waiting, the certainty of belonging. But the only thing waiting for her was the echo of that word, unemployable. Her mind drifted to the job interviews that had blurred together. The polite smiles, the quick handshakes, the way their eyes shifted once they scanned her papers. Each rejection was another crack in the watch on her wrist, another thread torn from the scarf she still clung to. She had started to wonder if she was invisible, or worse, forgettable. Yet even in that storm of doubt, there was fire. A fire she could not name but felt in the quiet moments when the world seemed to dare her to give up. It burned now as she stood in the station, surrounded by strangers who moved like they knew their place. And then, she felt it, eyes on her. She turned slightly, catching sight of a man standing a few feet away. He was not rushing, not speaking into a phone, not pretending she wasn't there. His hands rested loosely in his pockets, his gaze steady but unreadable. He wasn't staring out of curiosity. His silence carried weight, as though he was waiting for something. Her move, her choice, her voice. The scarf shifted with another gust of air. Her fingers trembled around the suitcase handle. She almost stepped forward, almost let herself vanish into the stream of departing passengers, but she didn't. Instead, she paused, her lips curved, just slightly, not into a smile, not quite, but into something raw, like confusion tangled with defiance. The man didn't look away, and in that suspended second, between leaving and staying, the station seemed to hold its breath. The air shifted, the kind of silence that comes before rain. Somewhere beyond the station's roof, thunder rolled faintly, like a secret muttered by the sky. She glanced at him again, not because she wanted to, but because something in him refused to be unseen. His shoes caught her attention, first scuffed leather, soles worn thin, laces tied with care but frayed at the ends. These were not shoes of someone rushing toward comfort. They were shoes that had carried him through too much. As he shifted slightly, she noticed the sliver of paper tucked inside his wallet, peeking out when he reached for his pocket. A photo, just the corner of it, a hand, a blurred smile, someone he hadn't let go of yet. Her chest tightened. She didn't need the whole picture. She knew the weight of keeping pieces of the past folded inside your pocket, hoping it would fill the hollow places. She carried hers differently, stitched into scarves, etched in watches, sealed in battered suitcases. But it was the same hunger, the same ache. The thunder growled louder. Drops tapped the station roof like nervous fingers. She wrapped the scarf tighter, though the air was still warm. I should go. The thought pulsed with urgency. Her ticket was in her pocket, her destination already chosen, even if it was chosen out of desperation. Yet, her feet betrayed her. They lingered, caught in the gravity of his stillness. He didn't step closer. He didn't speak. But the way his gaze held hers, quiet, steady, unreadable, was louder than the crowd shouting around them. And in that gaze, she saw something she almost feared, herself. The same fracture lines beneath the surface, the same silence that wasn't weakness but survival. The rain finally broke. It spilled down the station windows in restless streams, smudging the world outside into trembling watercolors. A woman cursed as her umbrella turned inside out. A child squealed at the thunder's clap. The departure board flickered lights, struggling against the storm. Her pulse raced. Was this fate? Or a trick life played, dangling a reflection to keep her from leaving? The thought tangled inside her. Maybe he was a mirror, or maybe he was a cage. She shifted the suitcase, feeling the weight in her wrist, in her lungs. The scarf brushed her lips again, asking quietly, "Which way?" The man tilted his head slightly, as if he could hear the question too. He didn't smile. He didn't frown. Just waited. She opened her mouth, words perched at the edge of her breath. But then the loudspeaker crackled. Final boarding call. Her hand froze on the handle. His eyes didn't waver, and the rain kept falling, heavy and endless, sealing the moment in uncertainty. The platform thinned as people disappeared into carriages. The sound of rolling suitcases, closing doors, hurried voices, all of it began to fade, leaving behind an emptier, harsher quiet. She took a step toward the train. Her pulse thudded against her cracked watch, every beat reminding her how close she was to leaving this station. This silence, this weight. Another step. The suitcase wheels rattled over the uneven tiles. Her throat burned as if every movement forward was a betrayal of herself, of the fire that still fought inside her. Then, almost without thinking, she stopped, turned, looked back, and there he was, still there, still waiting. The rain had spotted his shoulders dark, but he hadn't moved. His eyes locked with hers, carrying no demand, no plea, just presence. The scarf slipped from her collar, brushing her wrist as though reminding her it existed. She lifted it, only to realize her hand was trembling harder now. In that trembling, the scarf wasn't just fabric anymore. It was weight. It was memory. It was proof she had survived every dismissal, every locked door. And yet, seeing him, she suddenly felt it differently. Not as armor, but as something fragile, something that could be lost. A man walking past glanced at her suitcase, then at her scarf, then at her. His lips pressed tight, a silent judgment. Another woman whispered to her child, tugging him closer, as if the sight of someone alone, hesitating, was something dangerous. Their glances pricked her skin sharper than words. She almost dropped the suitcase handle, almost left everything there on the floor. The loudspeaker cracked again, warning that the doors were closing. Her body jolted, panic surging. She turned halfway toward the train, ready to flee from his gaze before it unraveled her. But then she saw it, in his hand, the scarf. Not the one she clutched, but its loose end, the part that had fallen unnoticed while she wrestled with her indecision. He had caught it without her seeing, holding it now with Karaz, though it were glass or fire. For the first time, he spoke. His voice was low, unhurried, carrying itself like the rain's rhythm. Some people carry more than just bags. They carry silence. Her breath fractured. The scarf between them became a line, a tether, a question. The train's horn wailed, metal doors sliding shut with finality, a final call, a final choice. Her eyes darted between the scarf in his hand and the train just beyond her reach. She didn't move. He didn't let go. And the station seemed to tilt under the weight of what neither of them said. The train pulled away with a thunderous sigh, leaving her stranded in silence that pressed harder than any crowd. She stared at the scarf still caught between their hands, her pulse thudding in her ears. He released it slowly, as if releasing something more than fabric. She clutched it back, but her fingers grazed his warm, steady, unshaken. She began, but the word dissolved, too fragile to survive the storm inside her. He didn't answer. Instead, he slipped a worn card from his pocket and placed it gently on her suitcase. No flourish, no explanation, just a simple act. Her eyes fell to the card. The logo stamped at the top froze her blood. The same name that had stamped her rejection letter weeks ago. The same company that had labeled her unemployable. Her chest tightened, air clawing at her throat. She looked at him again, really looked at the creases on his brow, the restraint in his stillness, the tired dignity in his posture. He wasn't just a man watching from the shadows of a station. He was the shadow, the one behind the doors that had closed on her. Thunder cracked, shaking the glass panels, that the scarf in her hands slipped slightly, exposing the frayed corner she had never bothered to mend. His gaze softened when it caught his eye, and then, barely audible, he said, "It was hers too." Her heart stilled. He reached into his wallet, pulling out the photo she had glimpsed earlier. He unfolded it carefully, as though time could still shatter it further. A young girl smiled from the paper, her scarf the same red scarf wrapped around her shoulders. Her knees weakened. She clutched the suitcase for balance. The scarf wasn't just hers. It carried someone else's silence too. Someone gone. And in that moment, her father's words rushed back to her, spoken over a different suitcase, a different goodbye. Even the smallest bag can carry your future. But now, the words twisted, echoed, fractured. What if the smallest scarf carried more than one life? Her throat burned. She wanted to scream, to demand why fate played these cruel tricks, why the man who had dismissed her existence now stood as mirror and witness. Instead, she whispered, barely audible, "Why me?" His eyes didn't leave hers. "Because you didn't look away." The words cut, raw and terrifying, because if she hadn't looked back, she could have walked away untouched. But now there was no return. The scarf, the rejection, the truth, they braided into one knot inside her chest. And when the rain eased, when the crowd thinned into silence, she found herself following him step by trembling step through a door at the far end of the station. Door that wasn't marked with a destination. Only with change. The corridor at the far end of the station was narrow, the kind most people never noticed. Its light flickered, buzzing faintly, echoing against walls stained by years of neglect. She followed because her body refused to stop, her pulse pulling her forward like an invisible leash. At the end, a door opened to a quiet office overlooking the storm-soaked tracks. Not grand, not gilded, just a desk, a chair, a stack of papers, and a man who carried silence like a second skin. He placed the photo of his daughter on the desk, smoothing it with care. Then, he looked at her not as a stranger anymore, not as a passerby, but as someone he had chosen to face. "You're not unemployable," he said finally. His voice was firm, stripped of pity, stripped of kindness. "You're unforgettable." The words struck harder than rejection ever had. They were not a gift. They were a sentence. Her chest heaved, the scarf trembling in her grip. Then why, her voice broke, why put it on paper? Why make me feel like I was nothing? He lowered his gaze. "Because I couldn't see you. I saw her instead." His finger brushed the photo. "Every word I wrote was to push away the reminder. But tonight," he paused, exhaling, "tonight you refused to disappear." Silence swelled between them. The scarf slid from her hand onto the desk, the red fabric glowing like a wound under the pale light. For a moment, neither moved. Then, with slow reverence, he folded it. He did not keep it. He did not return it. He placed it gently inside the cracked suitcase she carried, like sealing something unfinished, something larger than either of them. "It's not mine anymore," he murmured. Tears welled in her eyes. but they did not fall. She realized then this wasn't about rescue, not love, not even redemption. It was about recognition, the unbearable truth that sometimes you are seen only because you carry someone else's ghost. Her watch ticked, dragging time behind. She unclasped it, the cracked glass cold against her palm. For years she had worn it as punishment, proof of her failures. Now, with trembling resolve, she placed it beside his daughter's photo. A sacrifice, a small death, an ending. When she lifted her eyes again, she was no longer the girl abandoned in the crowd. She was the one leaving first. She turned for the door. His voice followed softly. Not every stranger you help is meant to stay. She froze, the words pressing into her like a second heartbeat. He finished, quieter, almost breaking, but some leave you changed forever. She did not look back. Outside, the storm had cleared. The station lights flickered against rain-washed floors, the same place where she had once stood invisible. But now every step she took left an echo, a mark. She wasn't the one waiting anymore. She was the one walking away. The station was nearly empty by the time she stepped back onto the main floor. The storm had passed, but its scent lingered, with stone, iron, and something raw that clung to the skin like memory. Her shoes echoed softly. No rush now, no crowd to bury her steps. The suitcase rolled behind her, lighter somehow, though she hadn't unpacked a thing. Inside, the red scarf rested quietly, folded with care. No longer a shield, no longer a wound. Just fabric, carrying both weight and release. She paused by the glass wall. Beyond it, the tracks gleamed under rainwater, stretching endlessly into the dark horizon. For the first time, she didn't feel lost watching them. She felt unbound. Her reflection in the glass startled her, not because of its fragility, but because of its steadiness. The same cracked watch was gone, left behind on a desk with a photo of another girl she never met, yet felt tethered to. In its absence, her wrist looked bare, almost reborn. She whispered into the silence, a line that rose uninvited, stitched from everything she had just lived. Sometimes love is not romance, it's recognition. The words steadied her more than any promise could. Around her, the station workers swept puddles into drains. A janitor glanced at her, then away, uninterested. A child tugged at his mother's coat, pointing at the streaks of light cutting across the wet floor. Life moved forward, quietly, without ceremony. And that too felt like an answer. She lifted the suitcase handle again, not with hesitation this time, but with calm. Each step forward was a decision, small yet deliberate, like choosing breath over silence. The scarf inside did not bind her anymore. It belonged to memory now, and memory belonged to her. Outside, the air was cool, washed clean by rain. Cars splashed through shallow puddles, neon signs flickered, and somewhere in the distance, a bell chimed the hour. She walked into the night, not knowing where she would sleep, not knowing what would open or close next, but she walked without trembling. She carried no plan, no guarantees, only the truth that she had been seen, and that she had chosen to walk away anyway. At the corner, she paused once more, her breath forming a pale cloud in the night. She looked back, not at him, not at the station, but at the echo of herself standing still hours ago. She almost smiled, almost. Then she kept walking, because some stories don't end in reunion or victory, they end in motion, and motion is its own kind of salvation.